Okay, what is my position on the public-private debate, which is escalating in many ways in terms of what it means and so on. Yeah, particularly as social networking becomes even more entrenched and pervasive in people's lives. Not sure if I can actually answer this question yet fully. I think I'm still forming ideas and forming what it really means for me. I've recently read Jeff Jarvis's book Public Parts, and I'm still in some ways trying to make sense of that. And it's a book that's actually received some interesting reviews because people who are non-public or think that too much being in the public eye, as it were, is not a good thing, and they see that as a disempowering thing, really. I criticised his book, and there's quite a bit of debate going around it, so it is definitely a controversial issue. With I think, as I say, the debate is just going to continue. I think that he does point out in his book that people probably do like to be in the public eye to some degree, that even if people admit it or not, having some level of public acknowledgement of something you've done, or some sort of people think that you are someone in the public arena, that people actually do see that as being a thing they would quite like, whether they admit it or not. And I think he's got a point there. I think most people probably do have a bit of a, well, look at me sort of a feeling somewhere. Not many people who are really what you might call cave dwellers, or really just want to get away from the public arena totally. So I think, given that, the level of public I guess exposure that people actually really would accept is probably quite high. And in fact, I think the fact that there are 750 million people on Facebook and now 40 million on Google Plus does show that people do actually have a bit of a need to be out there in the public arena. So there's a bit of a empirical evidence in some ways to show that that is the case. But having said that, there's no doubt that being more publicly exposed is inevitable. It's just going to happen. There's really no way of turning back on that one. Increasingly, we are being caught in cameras. We are being I guess our information that we actually share with the world is being disseminated. When we do a transaction, a credit card transaction, even though it may not actually be data that is identified against us personally, the data actually is still out there and is going around in some sort of a network, and often coming back to us in terms of advertising and news and so on, which is actually directed at us personally. So in that sense, our presence is public to someone. So I think it is inevitable. There's just no way that we can get away from, well, unless we actually stopped, I suppose, the whole World Wide Web direction and completely canned it, which some people probably quite like to do. But while it continues in the way that it is, and social networking continues as it is, increased publicness for people is inevitable, I think. And probably the question isn't so much how public are we going to be in the future, but how much control do we have of that? How much do we actually have a say in what is public and what is not public? And yeah, certainly some of the research, as I understand it, indicates that particularly younger people are not that worried about being in control of their public material, that they've grown up with it being out there anyway, and it's just not such a big deal. But for people who actually have expected a some degree of privacy for their things, yeah, some control is probably seen as being desirable. So that's probably one of the big questions, is how much control should we have over anything that we actually have out there in the world. For example, if we go through the middle of a town these days, which usually has a video camera videoing people who are walking through the main streets, or at least one, probably many, should we actually be able to say whether or not we want to be on that video camera, or is by the fact we're in that location acceptance that we will be videoed? When we do a call to someone like a bank or an insurance company, and it says this call might be monitored for training purposes, which is actually, I think, a bit of a con really, but nevertheless, should we be able to say, no, we don't want our whatever audioed? And generally speaking, you don't need a choice on that. It's just it is recorded, and that's it. So again, how much control do we have? That's probably what it comes down to, and how much control do we have over the interaction we have on the internet, of course, and material that we actually produce. Should we actually be able to say whether or not the mouse clicks we produce should be recorded and put somewhere? Again, that control is probably not possible, but the question is, should we have the control over it? So probably for me at the moment, the question is not what is the public-private debate, but what aspects of it do we need to actually look at, and I think the control one is probably one of the main ones. For me, in terms of public, well, I'm out there, I guess, in the world now. I can't really stop it. I'm, in a sense, committed to being a bit of a feature on the internet, whatever that might mean. I don't know. And the reason I've done it is that I know I'm on the cusp of that issue, and if I don't do it, then it's quite likely it'll never happen. So at least my material is there. Don't know. Anyway, that sort of answers the question, I think, and I'll probably have more to say about this issue as time goes on, because it is an important issue and one that I'm really quite interested in, and one that needs to have a bit more, or quite a bit of thought put into it as things move on. But irrespective of that, as I said, the world is moving on, and it's not really going to wait for me to ponder over the issues around public-private. It's just going to keep moving towards the public direction, I think, increasingly, with protests from the private people, and I guess we'll see where it gets to ultimately.